Hello, I'm Bob Weeks for Wichita Liberty TV, your weekly source for news, analysis, and commentary about Kansas and Wichita government and public affairs. Broadcast on Great Plains Television, that's channel 26.1, Sunday morning at 8:30, repeated at 4, then at 4:30 you get last week's episode played for you again. Also, my site, The Voice for Liberty at wichitaliberty.org. You'll find all the episodes of Wichita Liberty TV there, along with show notes and all the other content that I and others produce on nearly a daily basis. So today, we're going to take a look at some issues at the Sedgwick County Commission. So first of all, we've got our co-host Carl Peterjohn, who has a lot of experience in Sedgwick County government. We also have our guest, Commissioner Richard Ranzau, who's finishing up his second term as County Commissioner in District 4, which is North Wichita, Northwest Wichita, and up through Mays Valley Center, that area there, and is also a candidate for re-election in a couple weeks also as well. So Richard Ranzau, welcome to Wichita Liberty TV. We've had you on as a guest several times before, and thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
So there's a lot of controversy, turmoil, issues going on at the Sedgwick County Commission right now. It's been fairly widely reported in the newspaper, but and other media websites or media TV and websites. Could you just brief us on, from your perspective, what's happening there?
Well, it has been made public that there's an FBI investigation going on with respect to a couple of my colleagues.
So this is separate from, we all know Michael O'Donnell has been indicted, so there was that investigation, but this is something separate, isn't it?
Well, this is another investigation. It is connected somewhat to the original Michael O'Donnell investigation because there's a possibility that some of my colleagues have attempted to fire the county manager because they believe he cooperated with the FBI on the investigation with Commissioner O'Donnell. Mm-hmm. That would, of course, violate some federal whistleblower laws.
And I think, well, first of all, County Manager Michael Scholes has been there, 3 years, Carl, or something like that. He's doing a good job, isn't he?
Well, I believe he is. He's come in and actually improved things, improved our processes. He has instituted some accountability and got some people in some good positions. He's rearranged the structure a little bit, worked on increasing salary pay and a variety of other things, and I'm glad he's here. I think we're lucky to have him.
Mm-hmm. But not everybody is feeling that way right now.
Well, that's right. I mean, there's conflict behind the scenes, and there's some commissioners that have created a lot of havoc, basically, in the commission for a variety of reasons in a variety of manners. And the last 2 years have been particularly difficult in the commission. It's really been the most difficult 2 years that I've experienced since I've been in the commission. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly disappointing and frustrating because we have commissioners really doing some things behind the scenes for the wrong reasons, and that just creates turmoil and conflict because, quite frankly, our county manager, he is a retired brigadier general, and he is a man of honor and integrity, and he will not support unethical or illegal behavior, and I think he's taken the heat for that.
And Carl, you were telling me about Eric Yost, who is the county counselor. He's only been on board about a year or...
No, a little longer. No, he was hired in, I believe, 2015 or 16.
Okay. That he's, has a lot of integrity also, but yet they're bashing him from the bench too.
Well, they are, and there was the possibility, or at least a proposal behind the scenes about a week or so ago to possibly fire him. Mm-hmm. Because he's a good man, just like Mike Scholes is, and he's the type of people we need in government because he does behave in an ethical manner, and he won't allow commissioners to do things unethically or illegally, and he's been asked to do some things that were improper.
Okay. Well, Carl, I'm sorry I stepped on you. Please go ahead.
No, the question I'd throw out to you, Commissioner, the allegation's been made that we've got improper conduct by the county counselor, and the county counselor and the county manager are the two positions that the commission can actually fire people. You can't fire the sheriff, can't fire any of the row offices. He even can't even fire the county appraiser, even though he does report to the commission. There are only two positions, the counselor and the manager. And the argument's been made that the manager, there's been too much turnover. And my experience is there's a normal amount of turnover and retirements and resignations for a variety of reasons that occurs in county government, and I haven't noticed anything exceptional in that regard. Do you view that turnover as a problem, as part of the problem with the manager?
No, I don't, not at all. That's really just an excuse that some commissioners are putting out there. The difficulty we have responding to that is those involve, a series of personnel decisions relating to a lot of people, some of which, or most of which actually, people have left because of their own volition. They retired or something like that. So I know as a commissioner why people have left or are leaving. And I also know what commissioners have said behind the scenes to other people as to what the true reason was for them trying to, fire the manager. And so I have some commissioners that aren't being completely honest to the public when they're being interviewed at this time. But at some point in the future, it'll all come out.
And I know that, I think both Carl and I and you, Richard, believe in term limits for elected officials. I think term limits for bureaucratic managers is not a bad idea also as well. So hang on to that thought for a minute, Richard. We're going to take our first commercial break here. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back again to Wichita Liberty TV. Bob Weeks, your host, Carl Peter John, our co-host, and Richard Ranzau, Sedgwick County Commissioner in District 4, is our guest today, talking about issues at the Commission. We talk about making personnel decisions. The county manager, I suppose, is, of course, the most important one. Should we be making long-term decisions at this moment in time, Richard? And I say because Dave Unruh, District 1, is not running again. Michael O'Donnell, he's got a trial coming up. Who knows what's going to be that. We might, and other commissioners are facing election challengers too. So there could be, in a few months, quite a different body.
Well, that's correct. And considering some of the rationale behind the scenes as to why the majority is trying to do some of the things they're doing as far as personnel decisions, I think if we let a little time go by and a couple commissioners left the commission, I think things would calm down quite a bit and we'd be able to operate very smoothly.
Mm-hmm. And that is, people are criticizing that there needs to be calm. I mean, that's what Dave Unruh is talking about in his endorsement of Pete Unruh, that there needs to be calm. But
Pete Meitzner.
Pete Meitzner, I'm sorry. So, Richard, I'm sure your life would be much less complicated if you would just shut up and not bring up this stuff. So why have you gone through all of this, Richard?
Well, I'm not going to sit and remain calm or silent when it comes to unethical behavior or possibly criminal behavior. Mm-hmm. Essentially what they're calling for is for us to be quiet and cover up any misconduct. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that. And I know I take some heat from it, but I don't believe the citizens of my district or Sedgwick County in general would want their commissioner to remain silent when he knows other commissioners are doing things improperly.
And I think you've mentioned that on the campaign trail when you're visiting with voters, that they've approved of your stances on this issue.
Well, absolutely. They understand that their elected officials need to make decisions for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. It's not always just about what decision they make, but why they make it. Decisions need to be made based upon facts and the merit of the issue or the case that we're talking about, not because of our campaign contributors or our friends behind the scenes or trying to help, our colleague who's been indicted. We want to protect them. Well, we've got to do things for the right reason, and I think people appreciate elected officials or who are willing to take a stand and do the right thing, regardless of, the criticism they may receive as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a question that I think is going to be in the minds of all the citizens out there: can they have confidence in Sedgwick County government with, and Chairman Commissioner Dennis yesterday alluded to an investigation but didn't mention the FBI. Are there other investigations possibly going on besides the FBI at the county?
Well, no, there's an ongoing FBI investigation, but he's also talking about they want to hire an attorney to do an outside investigation into management, and specifically the manager. Actually, they're wanting, I believe, to use that outside investigation as a way to try and drum up some reason that they can use to justify firing the manager that would get them out of trouble for violating the federal whistleblower laws.
And that woman, her name escapes me at the moment. She was an attorney, works in human relations cases. She appeared at yesterday's meeting and did speak about that. And also the scope document that Chairman Dennis created was released as well. And I thought, boy, this is like a year-long project by a team of people to answer all these questions. I mean, hundreds of interviews there need to be. Think about, is the county effective in the way it promotes personnel or something like that? How can you answer a question like that without a lengthy investigation? And different people will have different opinions on that, I imagine, too.
Well, I understand, and they expect this to be done in 3 weeks. They have been in quite a hurry to get this done, which is troubling. If they want,
What is the hurry, Richard, do they say?
Well, I don't know what the hurry is, to be honest. I have proposed that they withhold any personnel decisions or investigations until the FBI investigation has concluded and we know what that shows. And then, based upon that, then we could proceed, if necessary, for anything else. Because I'm really afraid that that the majority will compromise this investigation, and that it won't be a totally honest investigation. So, but they are proceeding with it. So I'm going to do what I can to make sure and be a watchdog on this and make sure it's done right, and the lady that was hired gets all the information, and that everything is done in a fair and even-handed manner.
And I think Chairman Dennis was stressing transparency, but a lot of the information she might be gathering is going to be under the cloak of confidentiality because it's personnel issues. Is that right?
That's right, and it'll be attorney-client privilege. So I know he does speak a lot about transparency and openness, but they've done everything behind the scenes to this point.
And we're about out of time. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Carl,
that was
I'm
a
sorry.
quick last question. The allegation was made by Commissioner Dennis that Councilor Yost had been in violation of attorney-client privileges. Do you have any opinion on that assertion?
Well, he didn't say specifically what information he was talking about. I suspect I might have an idea, but it's related to some documents that would reveal inappropriate conduct or intent on behalf of my fellow commissioners.
Okay. Well, we're out of time for this segment, so I forgot to disclose at the beginning that, of course, I think all three of us are friends. Carl, you've made financial contributions to Richard's campaign. I have not, but I've helped out, I hope, during the primary campaign to push back at some of the lies coming from our Chamber of Commerce, believe it or not, against you. So anyway, Richard, thanks very much for appearing today, and that's it for the first half of today's shows, but stay tuned because we're going to switch guests and be right back in a moment. Well, welcome back to Wichita Liberty TV. Bob Weeks, your host here, with Carl Peter John, your co-host, and we've made a switch now. We had Richard Ranzau, County Commissioner, on the first half of the show. The second half, we have a candidate for a different commission seat. Her name is Renee Duxler. So welcome to Wichita Liberty TV.
Thank you both for having me.
Running for Sedgwick County Commission District
Yes.
1, currently represented by Dave Unruh. He decided not to run again.
Right.
So you are a Democrat, 1 year, well, I don't think you had a primary opponent.
Right.
Your opponent in the general election is a Republican, Pete Meitzner, well known as service on the city council. He did not have an opponent either. You've not held public office before, Renee, so what's inspiring you to run it this time?
Sure, that's a great question. So I've actually been a social worker in this community for over 15 years now. Started off actually working in Dr. Donna Sweet's office there at KU School of Medicine, Wichita. So people who know Dr. Donna Sweet, you can imagine the sort of education I kind of got from her, being a very strong businesswoman and advocate for her clients and patients. And then throughout have worked at Rainbows United for a number of years, did home services in their infant and toddler services program. So we actually drove out to homes to provide services. So I tell people I'm probably the only commission candidate who's actually driven every square mile of this county several times over, and just had that, real intimate experience with families, obviously, and connecting them to a lot of the services that the county commission provides for our families here in Sedgwick County. So having a pretty intimate knowledge and working knowledge of all of those health and human services programs has always made me interested in what the commission is doing and what they're up to. And so now I own a small business in the Douglas Design District, and have been a board member of the Douglas Design District for a number of years, even prior to owning a business there.
And for people who don't know, that's generally located along Douglas from about Washington on the west.
Washington on the west side down to Oliver.
Okay, all the way to
That whole
Oliver.
stretch,
Okay.
yeah, it's like, good stretch of land there. So in kind of working on some of the kind of district building and infrastructure projects and things that we were doing there in the design district, I really got interested in how those sorts of things play into the overall economy, mental health, well-being of residents. And just that overlap of all of those sorts of institutions and things. When Dave decided that he wasn't going to run, I really, started thinking maybe this was my time to insert into the political arena. I'd run some nonprofits before. I had a number of years of experience helping with policy-making decisions at the state level on some different committees. And so kind of all of that combined, it got me interested to maybe step up.
And in the shop that you own in the design district, not very far from our studios,
Yes.
so now you have private sector profit-making business, well,
Yes.
hope profit-making, business experience that way.
Yes, no, absolutely. And so kind of like I said, with all of that, as well as with kind of a disappointment in current leadership as to where things were going, how money was being invested. You mentioned I'm consider myself to be a Democrat, but I'm also a fiscal conservative. I have run a number of nonprofits, understand you only have so much budget and you've got to make those dollars stretch. And so that return on investment, both as a nonprofit administrator and now as a business owner, is always super important to me. And when I look at the management of government and where we're getting return on investment for taxpayer dollars, we're just not seeing that very well right now in our region, our community.
Let me ask you, as a former county official myself, are there certain programs that you'd like to see changed or improved, and if so, how?
Sure. I think particularly with county commission, what I would like to be able to see is, number one, are there any inefficiencies? Are there ways that we're spending money that's just not efficient? There is, when you look at kind of the overhead especially, it seems large to me. And again, that's coming from a nonprofit perspective where I had a 10% cap. I couldn't spend more of my overall budget on that. So for me, it's just curiosity in that. Like, are there ways that we can weed things down? And then I am particularly interested in the money that's being spent on corrections and the corrections facility, and if there is a way to better spend that money. I mean, I look at spending...
Are you talking about the jail solely, or are you talking about jail and the separate corrections area that Sedgwick County is involved in?
Right. I'm pretty much talking about the jail. Specifically, a lot of the mental health that we're providing in the jail versus community-based. I would like to see a lot more of that become community-based so that we're not putting people in jail, because recidivism rates in jail and jailing people, that to me is like burning money. I don't think it's a good, wise investment there. I'd like to see us do it with community-based services so that they're in the community, members of the economy, spending money locally, versus sitting in a jail cell.
I think, Carl, you've had some leadership on that issue in your time on the commission. It's not only the daily cost of a prisoner,
Right.
whatever they are, they're not all, I guess they're prisoners, but it's if we get full and then they decide we need a new wing to the jail, that's
Right.
when we really get expensive.
That gets very expensive both, although
Sure.
personnel actually is a bigger cost than bricks and mortar, but
Yeah, yeah.
but it's a very complicated equation.
Sure.
So that kind
sure.
of leads into bigger criminal justice issues overall.
Right,
But anyway, let's take our commercial break in this segment of Wichita Liberty TV, and we'll be back again in just a moment. Well, welcome back again to Wichita Liberty TV. Bob Weeks, your host. We've got Carl Peter John, our co-host, as always, and Renee Duxler, candidate for the Sedgwick County Commission District 1, mostly East Wichita and places up through there. And I think you live in College Hill, is that right?
I do live
Okay,
in
very
College
good.
Hill, yep.
So the opponent, Pete Meitzner, has been on the Wichita City Council for about 7.5 years. He wants to maintain his track record of successful economic development. He says his 7 years on the city council has proven to be a large part of the positive momentum we have recently experienced. How do you feel about those things that he says?
Yeah, you know, it's a little frustrating for me because I think there's a large portion of the city and the region who don't see that economic development, and I've been told that, you know, I'm being inaccurate or emotional about it, but you look at the data and you look at the numbers. We've had a stagnant economy for over the last decade. Numbers came out just last month that our economy actually shrunk last year. Then you also couple that with our chronic issues with our workforce and negative net migration, and then our crime rate continuing to rise, and especially in violent crime, child abuse, neglect, domestic violence. And so I don't take great pleasure in bringing those things up. I don't take great pleasure in talking about all of that stuff. I love this city, and I do see that there is positive progress, but it does frustrate me that there seems to be a little bit of a grandstanding of exactly where we are at versus what the reality of our situation is here. And I think we have to be realistic and look at the actual data and hit it head on. We've got to aggressively do something if we're really going to bring Wichita and Sedgwick County to the potential that I know is here.
And for the last several years, we've had the Chung report,
Right.
James Chung, and I think he says, well, this is my special data, but really most of it's data from the census, the
Yes.
Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, same thing that we've been talking about for years, that I have multiple visualizations
Right.
on my website, but still our leadership, the mayor, Pete Meitzner, the Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Wichita Partnership, the leadership at the County Commission, at least some of them, they say we've got this huge positive momentum going on.
Right. And I think, you know, there's half truth there. We do have, you know, this perception issue has, you know, I've been here 16 years. It certainly has improved the perception-wise. But you can't, you know, I tell people it's like any employer wouldn't find that satisfactory that, you know, we everybody, you know, it sounds great, but when you look at revenue, when you look at, you know, sales growth, when you look at the budget, I mean, the city budget right now
Population,
is, yeah, this, I mean, it's all kind of a little bit of a disaster. And so I have just been talking to taxpayers and residents and telling them, you know, you have to hold your officials accountable. If you were to have an employee who was telling you, you know, well, I've done all this stuff and yet your numbers, you know, weren't going up, you would have to say at some point in time at 7.5, almost 8 years, this probably isn't working, and fire that individual. And so I think that taxpayers absolutely have every right to engage in the system and use their vote to change out
one
leadership.
issue your opponents brought up, not necessarily in the campaign, but was the allocation. The county has a 1 cent sales tax. It's split between all the municipalities in the county under state law and Sedgwick County itself. 27 cents out of every dollar the county receives, they get to keep and spend. Half's supposed to be used for property tax relief and half's on roads and highways. Wichita, City of Wichita gets 57 cents out of every dollar, and the issue's been raised that that allocation is not fair. Do you have any thoughts in terms of how the sales tax money gets split up?
You know, I honestly feel like that I think there's a lot of conversations to be had around that, but I do feel like it's fair as it is. That when we're looking at splitting that up and how we're spending it, it really is a matter of, again, that return. If we're getting a good return with that formula, and economy's developing, we're seeing a workforce, then let's not broke, fix something that isn't broke. But for me, if it's not working, then we absolutely have to sit down and talk. And I think that comes down to a better relationship between city and county, and having those conversations and everybody coming to the table and setting egos aside and setting territory aside and just having better conversations around.
Well, with the short time we have left, the state has a lid on cities and counties for property taxes.
Right.
Do you have a position on that tax lid?
Right. So my position on that lid is that it's in place to protect taxpayers from city or county governments raising taxes without their vote. And so I absolutely believe that lid should stay in place, and that if we wanted to raise taxes, we should take it to vote. Let people vote on that and have our residents decide.
Okay. Well, we're about out of time here,
Sure.
Renee, so I used to tell people when to get registered to vote, but we're past that deadline there. I also forgot our disclaimer, and that I have made a small financial contribution to Renee's campaign. I have her sign in my yard as well, so I should have said that at the beginning there. Carl, I don't think, has taken a position in this race, but,
No.
but
I live on the west side of town.
he does.
There you go.
So, so anyway, so thanks very much,
Yes,
Renee,
thank you.
Renee Duxler
I
for
appreciate
appearing
it.
today
Thank
on our
you.
show, and short time till election. So think about the candidates you want to support and then get out there and vote. So thanks again. I'm Bob Weeks with Carl Peter John. We'll see you next week.